we're not exactly treading new ground and having firm management software for architecture and engineering firms. But what I think we are doing is treading new ground, having firm management software for architects and engineers that the whole firm can benefit from and be empowered by. So legacy solutions, frankly, have their roots in the 80s at a time where most households didn't even have personal computers. It's just very difficult to use, very difficult to extract information. There's a lot of overhead for firms required. Whereas we've said, look, we want the project managers to be able to engage and run their projects better. We want principals to extract insights. We want business development and marketing teams to be able to figure out which clients to go and pursue. We even want the design staff to not hate filling out their timesheet at the end of the week, right? And we think that by engaging the entire firm, we are better able to help drive great client and business outcomes versus what firms have been able to do before.
We've got a great conversation today with Matt Cooper, the CEO of BQE Software, the platform helping architects and engineers run their firms like world-class businesses. Before leading BQE, Matt built his career advising founder-led software companies, and now he's helping thousands of A&E firms scale smarter and stay profitable in a fast-changing world. In this episode, we dig into why Subscale can quietly kill firm growth, how to balance risk, people, and process when every role matters, and there's surprising ways AI is empowering, not replacing design professionals. If you're a firm owner, principal, or leader trying to grow sustainably, Matt's insights will change how you think about scaling and leadership in the built environment. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of Buildings 2.0. Today I'm with a really special guest, Matt Cooper, CEO at BQE. Matt, thanks for joining.
It's great to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
So Matt, before you were the chief executive of BQE, it's an all-in-one firm management software for engineers, architects, and professional services. Before that, you were doing consulting. I believe you were doing growth equity. But before diving into all that fun stuff, take us all the way back. Like, why startups? Why the serving AE sector? Like, how'd you end up there?
Yeah, so I started my career in consulting, serving very large Fortune 500 companies, and ended up just finding that the pace was very slow. It didn't feel like I was having the kind of impact I wanted on the organizations, helping people, helping customers. And so about 15 years ago, I made a pivot into technology and into businesses with more of a growth orientation. And was fortunate enough to latch on with a firm called Serent Capital that invests in founder-run and bootstrapped, effectively business-to-business software companies. And so that might sound like firm management for hotels or restaurants or you name it. One of the companies I was fortunate enough to support the founder was BQE, which again, firm management for architects, engineers, and other professional services firms, and got to really love the company, got to really love the customer base. And the founder, who had been running the business for nearly 30 years, decided it was time to pursue some other interests. And he's had a really fun run producing movies and traveling. But when he decided to go pursue other interests, he offered me the opportunity to work with this business and with the customer set. I said no at first. We were about to have our second child. Everyone has their imposter syndrome moment, but ultimately decided it was a good time to step in. And again, loved the company, loved the customer base, and joined about 2 years ago.
So now you're on the front row seat of a really exciting software company, between operations, between customers, between growing the business itself. What's top of mind for you? Like, what are you seeing on the kind of front row?
Well, so our primary company value is customer obsession. And so we are every day listening to and trying to react to the needs of our customer base, again, mostly architecture, engineering firms. I think there's a lot on their minds right now. There is quickly changing macro conditions. There are generational shifts. So how do different generations work together, succession plan, all of that I think is very much on the minds of firms. There's the impending, how is AI going to impact my business? Is everything I'm doing going to be obsolete? It won't be, but that's on the minds. And so I think there's a lot going on for A&E firms who not just have to think about how do I deliver great work for my clients, but how do I also optimize the business side? And so for a lot of firms who have their sort of design or execution-based software, we're trying to do our best to minimize some of the frictions and control some of the chaos on the business side, which is what we tend to hear about.
You, in a recent article, you wrote about kind of the struggle of Subscale specifically for like firms? Unpack that for me. What's the struggle and what's it mean?
Yeah. So I am wildly sympathetic and frankly think I myself would do a poor job running an architecture and engineering firm. And one of the fundamental differences running a software company that's, our customers sort of pay us the same amount year after year after year to deliver our software and service. But for A&E firms, the vast majority of which are under 100 people, and frankly, the vast majority of which are under 20 employees, there are a lot of challenges that I'm wildly sympathetic to running those kinds of businesses. You might have high client concentration. I just saw a stat suggesting that 75% of business for most firms comes from existing clients, which might be, you might have one client that's 20 or 30% of your billings. You might have different employees wearing multiple hats. You might have one person in a function. All of those are really difficult dynamics to run and thrive as a business, right? We're fortunate, for example, we have 300 people in our organization, which affords us the opportunity to sort of build expertise in different areas, hire for different functional needs. And I think as a provider to a lot of these firms, a lot of what we're trying to do is make it easier and help these firms build a little bit of scale, or at least replicate a little bit of that scale by, for example, helping them build more repeatable process, as an example.
Right. Double click into that. So I'm curious, when you consider the risks of a firm at that kind of subscale stage, how do you begin to quantify that risk? Like like how do you start to kind of unpack what it means, for example, to have customer concentration and when like what are the core things you're looking at?
I don't have a perfect answer for that one, but a few things come to mind. So if as a executive of a company, and I think a leader of any company, a lot of what you're trying to think about is risk management and risk mitigation. And so if I'm running an A&E firm, I might look and scenario plan, if I lose client X or a significant amount of business from client X, what does that mean for my business and what would my contingency plan be? One thing for A&E firms I think could be really difficult is if I'm hiring my first finance role or I'm hiring my first business development or marketing role, how do I know whether that role is performing? What is my plan if I've inadvertently hired the wrong person? Or maybe even better, how am I doing my best to mitigate the risk of hiring the wrong person in the first place? And so it's difficult to quantify, but we all know the challenges of losing a large client or making the wrong hire or things like that. Those are very expensive, right?
Right. Help me think through, outside of the solution you're building at BQE, like what is a firm owner's or just a firm's best alternative right now? Like what are they currently using?
So most firms, and it depends a little bit based on size of firm, but I would say most firms out there continue to be leveraging a combination of QuickBooks, Excel, and various point solutions.
Mm.
And that becomes really challenging for firms because those solutions weren't built for architecture and engineering firms, for example. And so managing phase-based projects, managing multiple contract types, doing it across multiple different systems, what we hear are things like, gosh, I'm getting my data a month behind on a project and I don't even trust it in the first place. Or, gosh, it's taken me 3 extra weeks to get my invoices out and I don't even know who's paid me, or things like that.
Right.
And frankly, when you're entering data in or managing multiple systems, there's also errors. And I think that goes to the trust comment. So I think it's very challenging for firms because there's efficiency losses and there's data and insight losses there. And at a time where, as I characterize, if firms end up being subscale, like data and efficiency are the things that often matter most, and having insights into what's going on in the business. What we have found for the other half of firms, for the most part, is they are generally leveraging very legacy solutions. So we're not exactly treading new ground and having firm management software for architecture and engineering firms, but what I think we are doing is treading new ground, having firm management software for architects and engineers that the whole firm can benefit from and be empowered by. So legacy solutions, frankly, have their roots in the 80s at a time where most households didn't even have personal computers. It's just very difficult to use, very difficult to extract information. There's a lot of overhead for firms required. Whereas we've said, look, we want the project managers to be able to engage and run their projects better. We want principals to extract insights. We want business development and marketing teams to be able to figure out which clients to go and pursue. We even want the design staff to not hate filling out their timesheet at the end of the week, right? And
Right.
we think that by engaging the entire firm, we are better able to help drive great client and business outcomes versus what firms have been able to do before.
Right. How do you see the life of a firm? So in other words, there's an obvious difference between, say, a one person firm versus a 10 versus a 100 versus 1,000. How do you start to kind of understand, the various chapters of a firm might go through and kind of the unique challenges, say, with one person versus, say, 10 versus 100? What have you seen?
We tend to think of different breakpoints around that journey. And so this is imprecise, but one of those breakpoints is that threshold between, let's say, 5 and 6. And obviously the range varies, but 5 tends to be very principle driven, everyone wearing every single hat in the organization, all hands on deck, and just trying to get the basics of process in place. And that's fine because you're not at a scale where you need the same kind of scalable and repeatable processes.
Right.
Then you've got the, let's call it up to 20, where you're starting to build repeatable motions. You're generally hiring a dedicated office manager or bookkeeper or admin and really trying to build scale as you add employees. So
Right.
how are your PMs doing things the same way? How are you delivering the same type of project over and over and over again?
Right.
And then the other breakpoint we often see then is, let's call it 20 to 100. You're hiring often a more sophisticated finance executive. You're starting to hire marketing and business development, getting to more specialization. And then up from there, again, seeing complexity, increasing importance of org chart. And so those are the breakpoints we see, generally 5, 20, 100. But it can vary wildly firm to firm. Like we still see firms with 200 people using the Excel QuickBooks combination, and kudos for them for making that work for so long. But we see also 5, 10-person firms saying we want to operate like those sophisticated large firms and really want to build process because we're expecting to scale.
So so I'm a firm owner and I'm trying to navigate making that jump from, say, the kind of the 5, 6 person range to maybe now we're growing and maybe we've got a line of sight to maybe have 20 folks and
Sure.
staff. How do I navigate through the kind of the flood of different softwares? I appreciate one of the things that I think firm owners might be facing is a bit of a fatigue in terms of options. I mean, you laid out, right? There's QuickBooks, there's a host of others. And how do I even sift through this noise? What questions should I be asking about what I need kind of in this next chapter?
I'm wildly sympathetic to this. It is surprisingly difficult for especially A&E firms, I think, to figure this all out. And in many ways, that's because there's not a clear definition or even a firm classification of the software, right? Some people call it professional services automation software. Some people call it project management software. Some people call it accounting software. I like to think about it as firm management software because we like to think that we are benefiting the entire firm, but you can Google all those terms and not find consistency. And so I think what you're generally trying to look for, and this narrows the set substantially, is software specifically for your vertical, architecture or engineering or on and on and on. I think then you're making a decision on what your growth prospects are to want to understand how configurable the software is. Will it scale with your business? And then I think you're trying to figure out what's going to be important is sort of CRM or client relationship management aspect because you really want to manage clients well. Do you want to integrate with QuickBooks still or leverage an all-in-one solution? What I would say generally is, frankly, probably until firms hit 100, there are substantial benefits of an all-in-one solution because as you start plugging in other options, that requires IT departments, that requires a lot of expertise, and integrations are always a little bit challenging. And so as I keep meandering here, there are a lot of considerations out there, but those are a few.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you started to kind of lay these out, but what are maybe some of the kind of most common like adoption barriers? Like, are folks just still kind of holding on to, the 1980 software, or like what's is it a monetization discrepancy? Like what are some of the barriers?
Well, and I want to be very like there is firm owners are very rational, right? Like these are all rational actors in all of this, and so there must be a reason why so many haven't jumped in and purchased software right now, right? I characterize most are still using your QuickBooks and Excel, which I would consider not leveraging purpose-built software. And I think there's a few reasons for that. One is our industry just hasn't built very good software in the past. It has been generally focused on 1,000+ person firms. It's been very clunky. It was developed in the 80s. And frankly, that's part of why I joined here is I viewed there as an opportunity to deliver and invest in great software. But it just hasn't been very good. And architecture and engineering firm owners are very good at building their own systems, managing their own process, making it work. And so if the software is not good, why change what we're doing? So I think a lot of that's on the software providers in the space historically. For reasons I just characterized, it's difficult to express what we do at times. I don't think software providers in the space have always done a very good job of communicating value. And frankly, I think it's scary. Like everyone's running a mile a minute and trying to deliver great results for clients. And so just the ability to pick up and invest in something new coupled with what happens if it doesn't go well can be a big barrier, right? Like our most common reason that a firm elects not to move forward is just status quo at the end of the day.
You know, I appreciate the position that you're in as a technology leader, building software for the services industry, as well as like some of the expectations that I think are put on technology companies versus say like services companies. Like it's different. I mean, talk to me a little bit about the tension, right? So on the one hand, one of the things that I've seen is that AEC mostly, they're a very project-based sector, whereas technology tends to want to skew towards kind of like recurring subscriptions and memberships and things like that. And I often find that these kind of like two often are kind of in tension with each other. There's also, software wants to build productized solutions and kind of maybe in tension with say maybe more hand-holding service-based approach. From your view, right, as a technology leader, like how do you hold these things in tension between like what you're building, some of the tensions there versus kind of like who you're serving?
So I've been in software serving businesses for 15 years, and I would say the tone 10, 15 years ago when the model was more on-premise, you generally paid your software vendor a lot up front and maybe had a small maintenance stream of expense. Trying to convince folks to pay for anything in a subscription model was very difficult 10, 15 years ago. I think most firms, most organizations, whether that's A&E or otherwise, understand the notion of a subscription model for software at this point. I do think it is incumbent upon providers like us to express that it is different than in the past because we continue to iterate on and improve software every 2 to 4 weeks is when we'll release updates. And so I think once we can communicate, hey, the value is ongoing, we continue to work on the software, and frankly, that's what we do. More than half of our staff goes directly to building great software and adding new features. Firms over the years have understood that notion. On the notion of services, though, I don't think you can have a software business doing what we are doing without trying to provide great service also. Again, the software that helps you set up your projects, record time and expense, invoice all of your clients, collect payments, manage your general ledger and your financial statements. Like there is complexity to that inevitably and inherently. And so for us, what we have spent a lot of my tenure doing over the last couple of years is how do we build sort of the best implementation engine we can? How do we make sure we have a support team that is well trained? Our folks are available 24/7, 365 for phone and email. How do we make sure that we have folks who understand architecture and engineering firms and the folks in accounting roles? So we've done a lot of hiring from industry or from the financial sector to make sure we are making it as easy to use and ramp on the software as possible. But it's inherently challenging for a solution like this. What I would say is nice serving this space versus some others I've worked in is these are professional services firms. They understand the value of an hour, right? Like most of them have an hourly rate. And so do often understand that services aren't necessarily free, right? Like there are people working at it. So it's, in some ways, it's easier serving the professional services industry because they understand that part.
Is there a story that might stand out to you in kind of your years of work, maybe a particular client or story in that they were able to successfully kind of make the migration and begin to kind of adapt more streamlined workflows?
I mean, it's difficult to pick one. What I would say is over the years, and this is always interesting to me, is like every vertical is a little bit different, right? And so my prior employer had businesses that did firm management for interior designers and landscapers and lawn care. All of those are different business than what we do, right? And so I think it's just a helpful reminder of how important serving the specific nuances and needs of each specific industry are. For us, though, we're onboarding hundreds of customers every year at this point. And so I think collectively, again, our goal or our mission, not mission's different, but our goal with each of those customers is how do we get them onboarded and to value as soon as possible? Because I think once we do that, in the grand scheme of things, the software relative to value we can provide is small, like the return on that investment is great, but it's incumbent upon us to provide that value. I think maybe the examples that are most impactful to me are the ones where occasionally the data migration might be imperfect or occasionally the implementation might not be, we're always trying to serve better, but sometimes the data is messy, sometimes we just don't bat 1,000, but making sure we have given those clients of ours enough time and attention and care. We are in this together. We need to get you to a great spot. That folks who maybe had a difficult start are then turning around and saying, oh, you should talk to this firm, you should talk to this firm we work with. I think they'd be a good fit there. And that's the most rewarding, when we're able to take those challenging early experiences and turn them into BQE core promoters.
Right. And it's a subject you touched on a little bit earlier in terms of the kind of service versus software and making sure that you're providing a good kind of client customer service. As you guys continue to grow, what practical steps can you take so that, both yourself and the team of engineers like stay close to the customer? Like what are ways that you guys are making sure you're kind of staying on the ground with the latest things that they need?
We've opened up as many communication channels as we possibly can. We have notion of a customer advisory board where we want to hear from our customers all the time. We have local user groups because we have thousands of customers across the country. We try to bring those folks together for feedback sessions. We have our product team. For software companies are the folks who are out talking with customers, designing the specs that then get built by engineers, out talking with customers all the time. The amount of feedback we get from customers is actually pretty staggering. I was on a call even earlier today. Like, I will call customers who we did not win their business simply to understand what were the feature gaps, where did we miss, where did we not communicate our value. Again, our number one value as a company is customer obsession. And so we are just laser focused. It doesn't mean the customer is always right, but it does mean everything we do is in the service of building better product and delivering better service for each customer. I would say this is a little bit tangential to what you mentioned, but to the extent your audience is working in architecture, engineering, other professional services firms, I think we probably go through many of the same challenges, the same things we're trying to do as professional services firms as well, right? Like there's a lot of applicability.
Right. So it wouldn't be a tech podcast if I didn't ask, but AI, both for your customers as well as for your team. What are perhaps maybe some of the more practical uses you found in your day-to-day that has changed how you think about the operations? And then is it the same for your customers?
So it's interesting being a software company in AI right now because there's two paths here. There's what is the AI features, functionality we ought to build into the software. And then there's what is the AI we ought to consume as a business to help serve our customers better, drive more internal efficiency and things like that. So I'll take the latter of those first. It's really interesting. It's been, I don't want to call it an expense, but in many ways it's been an investment so far because a lot of tools you try aren't ready for prime time. You don't know which of those are going to be. There might be 10 different vendors offering the same type of service and you don't know which is the right one. And so we've been doing a lot of trialing internally. We've hit on a few things, but again, this is maybe going back to that notion of being subscale. I have 300 people to test all of these things, whereas I think most A&E or professional services firms, it's a big lift to experiment with the AI tool set that's out there, right? I think it's not as linear, it's not as clear of a value prop right off the bat, which makes sense. It's a new technology, and I think it'll get there. But for the time being, it's a little trial and error right now. I think for us internally, the few things that we have found to be most productive are sort of meeting note takers, which simply help us serve our customers better because we understand everything they've said. And you've got your Chat GPT or similar products to help generate ideas and things like that. And then there are tools for our software engineers that help them be more efficient in what they're doing. So that's the internal side, I'd say.
Right. Well, I guess on the customer side, do you see? We had a guest recently talk about how AI introduces a paradigm shift in which we go from building tooling to sell to users or customers to just now building services to kind of do it for you. And I think that nuance is quite important. Are you seeing a similar shift, or are you, whether one way or the other, in that it's kind of reframed how you build software?
I think the notion that AI is just going to do it for you right now is a challenging one. And let's take our architecture and engineering firms. And I've been to enough conferences where the question is raised or posited, will we have jobs in a while, right? Like that's sort of the question on everyone's mind. And I think what is the case right now is AI is really good at supplementing, or AI is really good at helping practitioners, or getting better at helping practitioners be more successful. And so let's take our software engineers. I think if you just told AI code a bunch of stuff, like it will be fraught with errors. It is critical that the operator understand the database structure, understand the workflows in the software. Otherwise, you're just going to be riddled with error. The same, I think, is true for architects, engineers. Maybe AI can help with the ideation. Maybe it can help downstream in the design work. But unless the person knows whether the building's going to stand up or is, been able to see around corners before, I think it's really difficult. So I think the way I would think about it is, for at least the time being, I don't see it sort of replacing jobs, but I think the folks who aren't leaning into it will be left behind relative to folks who are starting to explore and improve their own businesses through it. And that's on the design side. For us on the, let's call it the business side or the management side of these firms, it's interesting. We've seen a lot of folks sort of throw a lot of AI at a wall and just see what sticks. For us, what we want to do, because we are building powerful software that helps firms run their business, is how do we take that power and sort of put it under the hood so that everyone in the firm can engage without necessarily feeling the weight of that system. So if I'm staff, how do I get my time entered more easily? If I'm a project manager, how do I check which of my clients hasn't paid without having to dive into the depth of the software? And just reveal that, make it easier to enter data, make it easier to extract. And I think where everyone's going to get to is how do we make the data more predictive? So it's helping, AI is helping us see patterns in it.
Double clicking into that, just to kind of maybe where my product manager had, in your view, crossing over the adoption hurdles, going from kind of legacy systems into a platform like yours, what have you found is kind of moving the needle or pulling the lever the fastest? Is it kind of feature sets that, so long as you can kind of deliver this for your clients? Is it maybe improving the onboarding experience? I assume it's a little bit of both, but like in your case, what's that bridge that you found is kind of the strongest lever to help them bridge that?
It's almost all of the above, because I think I don't like referring to the software this way, but it's sort of ERP software. It's sort of, firms don't like switching their firm management software at the end of the day, right? Like I would say when we talk to customers, we want to be the right provider for you for the next 5 or 10 years, because no one wants to go through this every year, right? It is, I don't want to say it's a huge lift, but it takes work, it takes investment. And I think if you're not able to speak to a lot of the different places where you can add value to the firm, something's going to lead to, we'll stick with the status quo, right? And so for us, many of these firms have been burned by their providers in the past because it was a difficult implementation experience, or they felt nickeled and dimed, or the provider did X, Y, or Z around pricing, and they feel burned, reluctant to trust a new provider. If you are matching the feature set, like that can be a challenge. So we as a firm try to paint the vision of, no, you'll be able to do resource planning a different way. You'll be able to collect a different way. All of these are incremental benefits. And I think the most important one is, can you build software that is ultimately user-friendly? Because a lot of the challenge of legacy systems is all the weight of the firm and all the weight of the system fell onto the shoulders of one person. And they've been doing it that way for 10, 20 years. And I am sensitive to that, but also in a figurative sense, like that's a lot of burden to carry for that long, and we need to make sure that they can engage everyone in the firm uh, to sort of energize things and again help deliver better outcomes. You can't pick and choose. You have to be able to communicate all those value points from my perspective. Yeah.
Matt, with these last few moments, I wanted to ask you. You've got two kids, two and 4. I've got a 1-year-old myself. Any advice? So between running a high growth
I should ask
technology,
you the same thing. Yeah.
we're all trying to figure this out, but very much appreciate how your kind of first full-time job with the kids and the families is in and of itself a difficult thing, let alone making sure that you're a leader for around 300 people. In your day-to-day, what's been perhaps something that kind of keeps you grounded and focused and yeah, how are you doing it?
Well, here's what I'd say. I have no advice that anyone should take for taking care of kids. Like we're all sort of winging it. I've read a couple books, but I think you probably are living the same thing. Like you just kind of have to figure it out. What I would actually do is turn that question a little bit on its head, because I think having kids, which in some ways is hours that I'm not allocating to the business. I want to think of kids as hours allocation, but like it's time. But in many ways, I think they have helped me perform better in my role, in my job, and for our customers. And like it is very neat seeing how curious they are about everything and ask questions. And I think sometimes in our day-to-day lives, like we can get very comfortable with what we know, and so that's a really good reminder to just stay curious and listen to our customers. Like I think that's an incredibly important thing for businesses to do. I think for them, like there are let's call it emotion or feeling regulation development. But I think it's also just the importance of pausing and understanding from our staff or our customers, like how are people feeling, what's going on today, why is the kid throwing this tantrum? Like there are real adult applications to that to understand what's underneath so we can sort of serve the underlying needs better. And I think just for me as an executive, this has just been a career learning for me. I have a tendency to get a little wrapped around the sort of smaller details rather than serving sort of our staff or the customer base as a whole. And I think it's been a good lesson in how do I prioritize on what's going to be most important. And I don't think that means things come off the table and doing a worse job. I think it means just focusing on the things that matter and doing them a little bit better, if I can.
I think
it's humbling. All this is quite humbling, but they've taught me probably more than I've taught them at this point.
Yeah, exactly. I think both humbling and also endearing. I mean, it's to your point. I think with less time than before, I think one of the benefits I resonated quite well is that kind of forcing us to like asking yourself like what matters, and that trickling into your personal life as well as the business itself. I can only imagine it's kind of helping you become a better leader there. But I very much appreciate how the day to day is a lot less sexy and more just like the roller coaster ride. But yeah, Matt, this has been super fun, man. I am really excited for to follow your journey. For those that are interested in following you or the company, where how do they do that?
Sure. So I'm available on LinkedIn. Matt Cooper. There are a lot of Matt Coopers out there, but if you've put in Matt Cooper BQE, feel free to follow me. BQE Software has LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube pages. I'd encourage folks to follow that. What I would say is, independent of the software, we've taken the perspective that we want to give back to the A&E and professional services industry. So if you do follow or you do subscribe, we're putting on 100 webinars a year, training sessions, putting out thought leadership with other experts we've partnered with in the field. And so independent of the software, I think we're doing some neat things to help sort of educate or answer questions on the business side of managing A&E firms that we've gotten a lot of really positive feedback about. So that'd be
Amazing.
it.
Matt, this was really fun.
Really appreciate you having me on. Enjoyed the conversation.